So let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And now over your ears, I open my heart to hear, open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. Now you just put your hand over your heart. Just extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that you are never alone. You are never alone. The presence of God is with you every minute of every day. It is actually who you are. It is in you. It is as you. It is around you. In Science of Mind, we say that you are not all of God, but God is all of you. The Muslim Sufi poet Rumi says, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. You say that again because it's so beautiful as Rumi is. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. That's who you are. You are the presence of God. That's our teaching here. There's no separation between you and God. That's the truth of who you are. You can lose a limb, you can lose your vision, you can lose your voice, you can lose your hearing, but you can never lose the spirit that is within you because you are a part of it. It is actually your very essence, this spirit. It flows through you and it flows through every single human being on the planet. And what's more, you have access to it 24/7. There's never a moment that you don't have access to this presence that is all powerful. Say that with me, all powerful. That's the essence that you have. Now, when I say that you have access to this essence, this universal spirit, it's not going to force itself on you. The recognition has to come from within you. You have to choose to know that you have this all-powerful essence that is within you. And choosing is only the first step, but it's an important step. And it's an important step to know that you get to go directly to the essence. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need Jesus. You don't need Buddha. You don't need Lao Tzu. You don't need a priest. You don't need a rabbi. You don't need an imam. You don't need a minister. You don't need anything to access this presence, this universal spirit that is within you. So after you choose it, and all of those may help. I know that sometimes the presence of Jesus in my life helps me access this universal presence. Sometimes the presence of Buddha in my life helps me access this universal presence. But know that you get to go straight to it after you make that choice. So here's the thing. You make the choice, and then you have to do as the song says. You have to listen. You have to be still. You have to be quiet. Babies get a pass, okay? Y'all don't get a pass. Okay? So we have to anchor ourselves in this meditation state, in this listening state. You know, I was remembering, in fact, this very morning, sometimes I do my meditation in the morning before I come to church, and my mind is going a million miles an hour. It's going about the sermon. It's going about, you know, are all the lights working? It's going about every little part of the church. You know, the flowers, are they done? Well, everything is going through your mind like a little monkey mind. And I remember the words of Joe Dispenza. He says, you have to train your mind like you train a golden retriever puppy when you start to meditate. Stay. 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 It's so great. And I keep doing that. Every time I leave, I just say, stay. Because I know the golden retriever in me has been let loose. We can train our minds, but here is the thing. If you can't or won't hear Spirit, Spirit will send some help to you anyway in the form of human guides, human being guides. You have them all over. They're everywhere that you go. You know, there was a commercial. There used to be a commercial that for, I think it was one of the tax companies, companies who did taxes for you. And the woman would say, I'll have your people call my people. And then the voiceover would say, when you sign with us, you've got people. And I love that because it's true of God. When you sign with God, you've got people. And that's an amen thing, isn't it? Sometimes those people look like your neighbors. Sometimes they look like your spouse. Sometimes they look like your doctor. Sometimes they look like your mortgage broker. Sometimes they look like your kids. Sometimes they look like your cellmate. For some of us, they did. They just looked like our cellies. Sometimes your office mate. But whatever they look like in the flesh, they are spirit in form. They are spirit in form. They are people who are there who have come to help with that which is your desire, because you are never alone. God is always with you. Now, here's what we know about God. Sometimes, we are never forced to have an unpleasant experience, ever. We are never forced to have a growth experience. We can, if we choose, just be in the stillness, connected to the divine in such an anchored way that we will get the message of what our next step is. Now, I would like to say I know how to do that all the time. I know how to do that very little bit of the time. So God sends me helpers, little angel guides. That's the nice way of putting it, little angel guides. See, we don't always get to be comfortable as we're growing. And that's on us. If we're not comfortable as we're growing, it's on us. See, the way the universe works is this. When your soul is ready for expansion, when your soul is ready to take its next step in life, it's talking to the universal spirit. Your soul talks to the spirit. Ernest Holmes would say your individualized spirit is talking to the universal spirit. We might say our soul is talking to God. Now, sometimes those conversations between our soul and universal spirit bypass our egoic mind. They just go right over it. We can't understand what it's saying, so we stop listening. Ever happened you've been in a room with somebody and they're talking about a subject that is just like foreign to you? And it just goes right over your head and you have no idea. So you just kind of, you act like you know what you're doing, but you have no idea what they're talking about. Well, that's sometimes what happens when our soul is talking to God. Our egoic mind can't even figure out what is being said. See, that's what happened to me. I found myself in ministry, signed up, before my egoic mind could kind of catch up with my soul that was saying, it's time for the next expansion. It's time for your next step in this life. See, and the presence of God will only speak success language. The presence of God, when it has a conversation with your soul, it will never speak lack and limitation language. It will only speak growth language. Hallelujah. But sometimes we have this filter and we think, ooh, that is too scary. Ooh, I don't want to do that. Ooh, no, not me. I don't want to do that. And so we put on that filter and we can't hear it. We shut God out. In fact, many people say that's the definition of ego, edging God out. And that's what we do. See, many of you are familiar with that game called Mother May I. Remember that game? It's sort of like your soul is saying to Great Mother, Mother, may I have help with this gossiping I've gotten myself into, this habit of gossip. And Great Mother will always say, yes, of course you can have help. I'm happy to help you. But if you can't bring this desire to stop gossiping into a firm intention into your conscious mind, I'm going to send helpers. I'm going to send you some helpers to gossip with, and there might be a consequence of that. And we'll let you learn that way. It's up to you which way you want to do it. You might say, Mother, may I get some help taking my head out of the sand when I get hurt feelings from somebody in my family or friends? Can I get my head out of the... Great Mother will always say, of course. I'm happy to give you help in taking your head out of the sand from getting your feelings hurt from other people. But if you don't take this desire for wholeness into your conscious mind, I'm going to send you some helpers. And it might not feel so good. Mother, may I get help with this drama in my life? I just seem to attract drama in my life. And it's causing me pain and people around me pain. Mother, may I get some help with that? And Great Mother will always, of course. I'm happy. But if you can't bring this desire to end drama in your life into a firm intention and hold it there for more than 90 seconds, I'm going to be repossessing your car, having your roof leak, having your relationship go upside down, because that's the help that is going to help you to move, to take action on this. Does it need to happen that way? No, not at all. I don't want to give you the idea that there's anybody named God in the sky who's going to send on down to you a plague or a wrath, because there isn't. We bring that on ourselves. Amen? Amen. All right. Many of you are familiar with the story of Jonah and the whale. And Jonah his soul was calling him to be more of who he was, which was a teacher, a preacher, a prophet. And Jonah, like many of us, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not good enough for that. No, not me. Let somebody else do that. And he kept with the excuses. And finally, he decided to take what many of us in the room call a geographic. A geographic is where you think it's going to be better somewhere else. But we forgot the spiritual teaching of everywhere we go, there we are. Yeah. And so he hops on a boat bound for Spain, and he's in the boat, and God tries to wake him up with a storm, but he doesn't wake up. He just sleeps right through it. So God sends him some friends, some spirit guides to help him. And they toss him off the boat. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this story, I'm paraphrasing and quickening it. Okay? They toss him off the boat, and he lands in the belly of a whale for 3 days so he can be in the silence. Now, he could have been in silence in the sunshine, but he was in the belly of a whale. And a lot of us, when we see that story, we think 3 whole days in the belly of a whale. How awful. 3 days in the darkness, in the belly of a whale. I don't know about you, but I've spent way more than 3 days in the darkness. Way more. Sometimes multiple years in the same darkness. Amen? Amen. I know I'm not alone here. Until he was ready. Until his soul and his mind caught up together. And when they did, the whale spit him out so he could begin to be who he was and do his work. Now, you and I can have that same experience much sooner if we're willing to be in the stillness and to know who it is that we're called to be. Well, I thought of this talk. I read this book every once in a while. It's called Living the Science of Mind. And it's a collection of essays by our founder, Ernest Holmes. Now, if you're joining us today for the first time, there was a man who started this theology. This is called a New Thought theology, and the interesting thing about this is there's nothing new thought in this whole theology. They come from all of these religions and some Greek philosophers and more religions than these even, and so there's nothing new. He just organized it in a different way. And one of the things, and in this book, there's some little essays about life situations. And I encourage you. Now, if you're taking foundations with me or with Reverend Betsy, don't get this book right now. You've got your book, you've got your homework. But for everybody who's either taken foundations or is going to take it in the future, get this book. It's called Living the Science of Mind, little essays. And here's how he starts off this how to create a spiritual chain reaction. Okay, see, that's what we want to do. We want to be these little light beacons that create chain reactions from everybody around us. We come here on Sunday, we get a few tools, we take them out, we use them, and then all of a sudden other people who don't come to the church yet are beginning to do these things. So here's what he says. No one lives entirely by himself. We are all individual parts of humanity. And whether or not we realize it, each is influencing those around him. And each, in his turn, is being influenced by others. No doubt, the thoughts and opinions and actions of the whole world finally are based on what everyone thinks and believes. So there are two things about this I want you to know. He says, no one lives entirely by themselves. We're all individual parts of humanity. That's important for us. We're not alone. We can't be alone. We're all individualized parts of this great humanity. And the other thing is, we can make a difference by being a spark to spark a chain reaction. Now, I know that all of us want to be a blessing in the world. I know that. We want to help everybody increase their personal wealth. We want to help everybody increase harmony in their family relationships, don't we? There's nobody here who doesn't want to do that. If you had the chance to help somebody in any area of their life and you had the skill to do it and they had the desire to receive it, you'd do it and they'd receive it and you'd feel better and they'd feel better, and the person who'd feel the best is you because you were able to help somebody. It's a powerful, powerful feeling to be that kind of a blessing in the world. Well, the first thing, I'm going to give you three. We're a practical church. If you're visiting today, we're practical. I think it's good that you know about Jonah and the whale, but I don't really care about that. What I care about is that you know that you could get out of the whale by doing certain things. So what I'm going to do right now is talk about three ways that we can start this. We can be the sparks that start this spiritual chain reaction to improve the world. And the first thing is that you have to understand it all starts with you. Turn to a neighbor and say, she means you. I mean you. I mean everybody. It all starts with us on this planet. Before we pick up any anti-war sign or go to any peace rally, we have to take the moment to sit down and look at what's in our heart. Do we have resentments in our heart? Are we rehashing and rehashing and rehashing and rehashing a conversation with an ex or with a friend or with a person at work? Because if we are, we need to clean that up before we go out into the world. Because peace is an energy. It's an energetic. I spent a long time in the far left movement on the planet. And I was in order to be in the far left movement years ago in the 70s and 80s, you had to have anger. You had to have some righteous anger. Because if you didn't have it, you couldn't do the things you were doing. Okay? I had to come to a church like this to let go of that because it is not helpful. I can remember once I worked for many years in the farm workers movement. And I can remember during the boycotting the grape movement, You know, it would have been one thing to help people understand why they should not buy grapes until farm workers were treated with dignity and had enough money to live on and had a decent place to live and raise their kids. That would have been one thing, had I spent my time doing that after I had cleansed myself of anger. But no, I just revved up my anger. So it was our practice every Friday to go to Safeways all over the United States, get all the grapes we could get in the bottom of a basket, and then put frozen turkeys on top of I'm not proud of that. But you see, when you're that angry, I mean, it didn't really do anything at all. Didn't educate anybody. Sure, it made the poor guy who had to clean the floors upset, but in order to really make a difference in peace, we have to go to that field where there is no right and there is no wrong. That field before there is right and wrong. And when we're there, we release an energy. And when we release that energy, other people begin to catch it without even knowing it. And when we walk in that energy, when we walk in the understanding that another word for God is peace and another word for God is your name. Amen. When we get that, we begin to bring peace onto the planet. Now, there's nothing wrong with placards and peace rallies and all of that stuff if they're done in love. But they have to be done in love. The second thing is develop the ability to say goodbye. Develop the ability to say goodbye. You know, if someone doesn't want to be around you, you can't manipulate them. You can't control them. You can't do any of the things we try to do to keep people near us. We got to let them go. We have to develop the ability to say goodbye in love. Well, no matter who it is, whether it's somebody in your family who needs some space, maybe it's an emerging young adult child, that we need to say goodbye for now and let them be and develop themselves. Whoever it is, maybe it's an ex, and you're still kind of hoping. If they've made it clear they want to say goodbye, you have to let them say goodbye. It's painful stuff. I remember when I first sobered up having to say goodbye to my drinking buddies. And that was painful for me because I love those people. We had a good time. Well, some of the time we had a good time together. I liked them. We have to learn how to say goodbye. I've had to learn how to say goodbye to people in this church. And that's painful. Because, and what I would do is I'd make myself sick trying to run around and figure out what could I give them that would spiritually nourish them. And the answer is nothing. I had to say goodbye to them. It's painful to say goodbye. But in order to be able to be this spark of having a spiritual chain reaction, we have to learn the art of saying goodbye. The last one, and I want to just say that saying goodbye is a powerful spiritual practice. Amen. You know, sometimes we say spiritual practices are meditation and prayer. They are that. They are so much more. And they are this one especially. The last one I want to talk about, many of you are familiar with because I do it at least twice a year. By calendar. I know when it's time for me to do it again. And it's time. And that is to remind all of us that it's all good and all God. Now that just is not a Sunday saying. It's a deep spiritual understanding that we have to get deep inside of us. It's all good and it's all God. Now notice I didn't say happy. Sometimes what's good for us does not make us happy. It makes us very, very sad. And I have compassion for that. I have love for that. But it's either all good or all God, or it's not. And in this church, we teach it's all good and all God. And one of the things that we have to learn to do in order to anchor that in our everyday is to stop complaining. We have to learn to stop complaining. So we're going to take, we do this a couple times a year. I'm going to ask you to take the challenge, take the pledge, as we say. I'm going to ask you for 21 consecutive days to stop complaining. Consecutive days. Amen? So consecutive days means this. It means you stop complaining. You're so proud of yourself. You're doing really well. People come up. They invite you to complain, don't they? Ooh, they just invite you to complain. Oh, gosh. Come on, complain. No, not doing it. And you do that for 11 days, and then on the 12th day, oh, you just can't help it. You just cannot help yourself. You got to say something. You go back to day 1, because this is 21 consecutive days. Now, sometimes people come in my office and say to me, you know, Reverend George, I'm not feeling God. I just don't feel God. I'm not feeling it. So I give them this exercise. Oh, Reverend George, not that exercise. I promise you, if you do this for 21 days and you're successful, you'll feel God in a different way, a whole new way. Well, every time somebody complains, you know, complaining is a verbal thing. And so now we have to have something to say in place of that, don't we? So here's what you say. You want to complain. Ooh, you want to it's right. It's right on your lips. And what you say is, God, that's great. So, you know, something happens and you just, God, that's great. Say that with me. God, that's great. Now, it can't be, it's got to be, God, that's great. Can we say that together? God, that's great. All right. So that's your homework this week, is to remind yourself every time to say, God, that's great. And let's see what happens. I think this church is going to levitate when you get back here after 21 days. You don't want to miss next Sunday, because we have Mari Perrone coming, and she channeled the book, A Course in Love, from the master teacher, Jesus. Now, let me tell you about channeling, because a lot of people have a lot of opinion about it, and metaphysicians seems to have a lot of opinion about it, okay? Everything you write down, you just channeled. Everything you write down, you just channeled. Now, whether your connection is strong or weak, it's a channeling. So sometimes I notice in religious science now, some of the better writers in our movement are saying, I downloaded this. Because God forbid they'd say they channeled it. Okay? So I want you to come next week with an open heart and an open mind. This is beautiful stuff. I've taken the book home, and occasionally I'm mostly focusing on Joseph Dispenza right now, but I occasionally flip through it and I just sit in contemplation of what she has channeled, and it's really quite remarkable and quite beautiful. So I hope you'll be here next Sunday, and bring a lot of friends next Sunday so that we can fill up this church, and because whatever you hear and whatever your friends hear, it'll go out. People talk about it, the water cooler, this, that, oh, I heard this, I heard that. All that does is up-level things. I mean, I think it's great that Kobe Bryant shot 60 points, but I think there's more important things to be said at the water cooler. All right? So let's take this message into prayer, knowing there's only one power. It's the power of love, and it flows right through us. Knowing that love is an invitation. It's an inviter. It just invites more love, more grace, more compassion, more understanding, more money, more connection. Just more of everything. That's what love does. It releases any barriers that are holding any of the good of ours back. It just lets us flood through us. I give thanks for that. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.